What is food psychology? Well, have you ever eaten something against your better nature and then felt guilty about it? Or have you ever thought that you would absolutely stick to a regime and then got tempted? And did you blame yourself or did you blame the food for being too tempting? Food psychology is really about why we make the food decisions that we do, and especially about why we do things that seem to sabotage us. It's about dismantling all of the mental health baggage and the food noise that goes with guilt and shame from a society that tells us that we should try to be a certain size, we should restrict our food and try and avoid bad foods. And in doing so, how deeply we end up being obsessed with them, craving them, and sometimes even binging. So, food psychology uses a variety of different psychology practices and tools to help you. And I just want to point out a few of what's in that toolkit so that you know what's under the one umbrella. First up, my favorites come from CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which really goes to illustrate how our vicious cycle of behaviors is fueled by our thoughts and emotions. Mindfulness has been a huge influence, both in giving birth to mindful eating, which puts us back using awareness based practices with our sense of hunger and satisfaction, and which is also a central tenet of intuitive eating. But mindfulness also has given us emotional tools to really feel our feelings as we go along in their felt sense in our body. So, food psychology can really take in some of the more somatic practices of feeling feelings, parts work, and psychotherapy that allow us to really understand what are the emotional hungers behind eating. Emotional intelligence is a term which is often used for understanding and being aware of and being able to process our emotions. But there are lots of other somatic practices that allow us to do that, not least nervous system resetting, um, parts work, psychotherapy. And we don't necessarily need to be psychotherapists to access some of the wisdom that's offered by those practices. Nervous system was something that I mentioned, and really the growth, the burgeoning in research around mindfulness has really shown us how we can work with stress and really how related stress is to so much of what we do. And Mark David in 2005 wrote The Slow Down Diet, where he was really noticing how not only if we slow down whilst we're eating and get out of our body's stress response, can we bring more awareness to our eating and undistract and be present with the experience, but also how our metabolism switches then back into its rest and digest response and is able to give us its natural signals. Intuitive eating is an interesting one because, as well as bringing in some of this hunger fullness stuff from mindfulness, intuitive eating also takes a position against diet culture. And so, food psychology will also need to bring in some psychoeducation on sociology, politics, and especially gender politics to do with body image and the pressure that's upon us, both as men and as women, to conform to a societal ideal of what an ideal body should look like. And in doing so, makes us really over focus on what we eat and eating less, which in turn fuels a lot of the unwanted eating behaviors and takes us away from being with our body through the eating experience, knowing, is my body hungry, or do I just want things for other emotional reasons? And so intuitive eating is anti-diet. Body image work as body positivity movement, which kicked off on Instagram in the 2010s. And if we can work with body image alongside our eating, we're really looking at all the ways we can ease up the pressure on us to be a certain way, so that we can stop feeling like our self-worth depends on getting eating right. And we can start to work with our eating in a much more compassionate and curious, less self-judgmental way. And that's really in tune with health at every size, and that movement which was about, hey, let's promote taking healthy behaviours for their own sake, for well-being's sake, and stop worrying so much about the weight piece of the equation. Because if we take the healthy behaviours, maybe our health, our blood pressure will get better, our self-esteem will get better, our diabetes will drop, and we don't need to constantly think about weight as being the central focus. And perhaps I would say that the health at every size goes hand in hand with the central tenets of lifestyle medicine, which are really about taking a preventative, lifelong approach to changing how you eat and how you move and how you work with stress and how you sleep, um, and less about focusing on weight as if it's a kind of problem and in isolation from the rest of the ways that you live. And how about us preventing ourselves getting into ill health in the first place? Of course, nutrition has to come in here somewhere, since we need to eat real food more and less processed food, and we need to look after our gut health. But eating psychology is overall more concerned with why we make the food decisions that we do, and less about what those food decisions actually are. And I think the idea is that when we feel good about ourselves and we are really partnering with our bodies in health, that our intuitive sense of what's good for us to eat will kick in. But it might be that food psychology needs to go hand in hand with some nutritional education and some practical strategies for eating real food more. How do we fit this into our really, really busy working lives? So food psychology is a response to the pickle that we've got into as a society, in terms of body image, in terms of diet culture, in terms of fitness culture, in terms of fast food, junk food, sugar consumption, overwork, living very busy lives where food no longer really has much prep time or thought going into it. And at the same time, feeling like we're trying to get it right. We're very educated around what's right for us to eat. And we're thinking very intellectually, whether that's in terms of calories or in terms of nutrition, and less physically. I hope that's given you a quick summary of what food psychology is. If you're interested in giving yourself a psychological upgrade, a re-education on food psychology lines, I highly recommend it. It's a combination of psychoeducation and eating technique that can bring you back in touch with your emotionals, aliveness, and your body's real senses. And there's nothing better than actually being back in this beautiful body of yours and not standing outside it, criticizing it. So, if you're interested in learning more, I teach a fundamental course, Food Psychology Fundamentals, does what it says in the tin, introduces you to some of those basic concepts and really dismantles some of the expectational baggage that has us sabotaging ourselves no matter what diet approach we try. Check it out in the notes.